Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and welcome to my show, High Road to Humanity. In every episode, I tell you powerful true stories filled with great wisdom that you can use in your own life as you strive for a higher road to travel. My featured guests will have their own unique stories to tell that enlighten your mind and your soul. So kick back, relax, and learn the secret to success when you take the high road.
First touch, strong connection, it lays deep in your soul.
Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and welcome to High Road to Humanity. And guess who's here today? I have Miles Nichols with me, and Miles and Diane Mueller have written a wonderful book. This is something that's really important, guys. You're going to need to share this show. This is Use Your Mind to Heal Your Mold and Lyme. Now, I don't know how many of you know this, but this has become a real situation in the US and I would imagine abroad. And he's going to talk about it. Let me read his bio real quick. You know, Dr. Miles Nichols is a functional medicine doctor specializing in Lyme mold illness, gut, thyroid, and autoimmune disease. I can't talk today. After Dr. Miles personally struggled with chronic fatigue in his early 20s, Dr. Miles dedicated himself to figure out the root causes. He suffered with and recovered from thyroid dysfunction, autoimmunity, a gut infection, Lyme co-infections, and mold illness. Wow, this is some crazy stuff. I've got thyroid disease. I've got Graves' disease. So I get this.
Yeah.
It's welcome to High Road to Humanity.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here to talk about this today. I've never had anybody on my show to talk about it, but it is something that needs to be brought to the forefront. So I'm really glad that you're here. Before we get into it, I have to bring up a couple things. Well, just one thing really. I pulled this offline. Moderna CEO says existing COVID-19 vaccines will struggle with Omicron. Well, let me just say it'd be great for them to have a new variant so they could just come up with another vaccine for us so they can make some more cash. But having said that, Moderna CEO Stefan Bancel predicts there will be a material drop in the effectiveness of the COVID-19 vaccines against the Omicron variant and says it will take drug makers months to produce enough target jabs for the emerging strain. There is no world, I think, where is the same level we had with Delta, Bancel told the Financial Times on Monday. I think it's going to be a material drop. I just don't know how much because we need to wait for the data. But all the scientists I've talked to are like, this is not going to be good. He added, at the company's headquarters in Cambridge, Massachusetts. You know, I don't know. Maybe there is a variant. Maybe there's something out there, but here we go again. Do you want to comment on this, Miles?
Well, my hope is that through some of the craziness in the world that we'll get to a point of appreciating chronic infections in a bigger way. I think the long haul COVID the researchers starting to discover things around long haul COVID. I'm hoping will bring more awareness to chronic Lyme disease because Lyme has this aspect of political controversy over whether it's only an acute disease or whether it can become chronic and can continue to cause symptoms for many years for people. And that's been very controversial in medicine for a long time. And so one of the silver linings that I'm hoping is going to come out of this situation is that the long haul COVID research will translate into realization and recognition that other infections like Lyme can also become chronic and affect people many years after infection.
Well, that makes sense. Listen, I love your slogan, medicine with heart.
Yeah.
That is really cool. So talk to me. You know, Diane had this, you have this. Tell me your story. I mean, how did this all come about?
Well, early 20s, I was working on getting through school and having a bit of a challenge and struggle, especially getting to morning classes. I remember when I was pulled into the principal's office and she said, "You're going to be a great practitioner, but you got to come to these morning classes or we're going to have to do something about your education." I was threatened with not being able to complete school, not being able to follow my dreams. I started to get really concerned about am I not going to be able to do what I want to do? Should I just resign to doing something different? Why am I not capable of waking up in the morning? Why am I not capable of getting to class on time? And I was doing well academically. It was just that morning class and feeling tired all the time and struggling to be able to get through the day.
Right.
And the principal at the time said, something might be medically wrong. And I said, well, I agree, but I'd gone to the doctor and they said nothing's wrong, ran some blood tests and said, maybe you're depressed. And
sorry, just that bugs me. Okay,
It
but you didn't
does,
have
yeah.
thyroid or anything. Your thyroid was okay.
Well, it wasn't, but they said it. So the TSH, the thyroid stimulating hormone,
Right.
had tested about 4.2, which for those who know what thyroid stimulating hormone is, normal conventional lab ranges say anything up to about 4.5 is normal. But in functional medicine, we know optimal thyroid function when you exclude people who have unhealthful thyroids and you really only look at a healthy population, then 0.5 to 2.0 or maybe 2.5 at the highest is really looking at normal thyroid function. And anything above 2.0 or for sure above 2.5, it's very clear that that's associated with a problem. And yet my 4.2 was not identified as a problem because it came within those quote unquote standard lab ranges. And so unfortunately, that led me to go undiagnosed for a long time with a thyroid problem that we might call in functional medicine a subclinical. It doesn't get the clinical diagnosis of hypothyroidism. But when you look deeper, when I did free T3 and looked at antibodies and looked a little deeper, there was a thyroid issue there and it wasn't identified. And that led me on a journey to try to figure out, was there a thyroid issue? What are underlying root causes? And that led me to do all kinds of other testing and identify eventually that I had antibodies against cells in my stomach, which is an autoimmune process. And I had H. pylori, which is a stomach infection, even though I didn't have digestive symptoms. So no one thought to test for that, but it was there. And we know from research that H. pylori is associated with thyroid antibodies and thyroid autoimmunity. So I had to figure this stuff out on my own, do research to figure out that, H. pylori is associated with thyroid issues. I see evidence of a thyroid issue. I'm going to test H. pylori even without the normal symptoms associated with H. pylori. And I found it and I was able to treat it. And then I found research saying 20 to 40% of people with thyroid issues have antibodies to cells in the stomach. Again, this was something that people don't test for without symptoms usually, but I tested for and found that I did have antibodies against cells in my stomach. And it goes on to discovering chronic infections. And,
yeah. Well, and I'm just going to mention, I have thyroid disease. I have Graves' disease, and I did the wrong thing when I was younger. They had me drink the radioactive iodine, which now I wish I wouldn't have done it, because if I can't get my medication, I'll die. That's it. I'm done. I'm all done. But nobody told me that. And all they did tell me is it could flip.
Yeah.
It's so weird that you'd be on today and talking about this stuff. And it does, and the stomach thing has got something to do with it too, because I love that correlation that you're putting together between the thyroid and the issues with the stomach, because I've had that too. And I think a lot of people, I guess what I'm really thinking as you're talking is, how many people have this? A lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. And in terms of the Lyme and mold piece, that's a big piece too, that a lot of people don't realize that they have, because all they know is they have pain and they got diagnosed with fibromyalgia. But we know very clearly that a root cause for fibromyalgia is Lyme disease or other chronic infections or mold illness. And same thing with depression and anxiety. We also see that there's a root cause often for, and this is one of the big missing ones, depression, anxiety, because so many people just immediately go to a psychiatrist and go on psych meds instead of looking for medical root causes that aren't just medicating the neurotransmitter imbalance. So when we look at why depression and anxiety occur, there's very clear evidence that certain infections
Right.
like Lyme and Bartonella, and even exposure to mold, can create an autoimmune response against receptor sites for dopamine in the brain and a couple of other neurotransmitters that can lead to sudden significant changes in personality, mood. And this is also just not known in the world today. People don't understand this very well, even in the medical community. And so it
It's all
goes
connected. It's all connected. It all has to.
Yeah.
We're going to go to commercial break. When we come back, I really want to talk about how we get this and what is it? You know, how do we even get this stuff? You guys, his book is called, I'm going to hold it up. If you're watching me on YouTube, it's Use Your Mind to Heal Your Mold and Lyme. Okay, this is what it looks like. It's a survivor's guide. It's by Diane Mueller and Dr. Miles Nichols. This is Nancy Yearout. This is High Road to Humanity, and we'll be right back. Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and this is High Road to Humanity. I'm here today with Dr. Miles Nichols, and I'm so glad that you joined us today. I want to know how do we get Lyme's disease? I mean, every time I heard about it, I think about, well, maybe he's down on the farm or, no, I mean, how do we get this stuff? Honestly, what is it? What is it?
Yeah, Lyme disease is caused by a bacteria called Borrelia burgdorferi, and this bacteria is transmitted primarily, we know it's transmitted through ticks, and that's what is commonly talked about is tick bite causing Lyme disease. And it used to be thought, oh, this just occurs by tick bite, and it's only usually in these places, usually like the East Coast. Lyme was actually a town in Connecticut where it was first discovered. And so it used to be thought, oh, it's just people on the East Coast who are out in nature who are getting bit by ticks are the only ones who have Lyme disease. But Lyme disease has now become the fastest growing infectious disease, bacterial disease, and it is now found coast to coast. So in California recently, the Bay Area Lyme Foundation published some research showing a lot of ticks that carry Lyme in the brush on the beach in Northern California. So we know that Lyme carrying ticks are now being discovered all in many more places than previously thought. And we also now know that Lyme can transmit through the placenta, similar to child. So of someone who is born with it doesn't necessarily have to ever have been exposed to a tick in order to get this infection. And many times when we talk about Lyme disease, we're actually talking about and co-infections or a grouping of other diseases. These other diseases include Bartonella, which is a bacteria that's often called cat scratch fever, is what some people refer to. So we know cats, claws, and dogs can transmit Bartonella. So you don't have to have a tick bite to receive Bartonella, although ticks can transmit it. Dogs and cats can transmit it.
Get a scratch is what you're saying from your cat or from your dog.
Through a scratch or through a bite, it can transmit. And then there's also the ability to, when we expand into these co-infections and we include Babesia, Bartonella, Ehrlichia, and some of these other chronic infections, then we're looking at also adding in things like flea bites and mosquito bites. And we know some diseases can be transmitted through a variety, spider bites, a variety of insect vectors.
Right.
So who hasn't had some degree of insect bites?
Sure.
And so many of these infections go undiagnosed. People have them, and some people never get big problems from them. So they're not always a problem, but when they are a problem, they often get masked because people get diagnosed with other conditions that end the investigative process to try to figure out what root causes are, unfortunately.
I get that. Now, I have a question. Why or how, or you may not even know this, all of a sudden, why has it gotten so big in the United States? I mean, I saw some of your statistics in your book. It's a long book, but it's very, very well written. I just want to say, let me say that really quick. Diane tells her story. There's so much information. I mean, it's a really, really good book. But you do say in 2015, the CDC released that Lyme disease had an increase of 325%. Why the big increase, I guess, is what I'm trying to figure out here.
Yeah, and there's a lot of debate, and I don't think anyone knows for sure, but certainly there's probably some aspect of environmental issues, pesticide use, and things like glyphosate use and other things might create a ripened environment for the spread of ticks that carry Lyme, and other aspects might worsen the ability for and they're weird mechanisms, like ticks will latch on to birds, and those birds will fly many miles, and then the ticks will be in new areas. And so there's a lot of ways that ticks are traveling, but there's also probably environmental circumstances that are making it riper for people. And it's possible there have been a lot of ripeness for Lyme to become a bigger health problem due to people having more chronic illness that can be triggered by, in other words, there are a lot of people who could have Lyme and never have symptoms, but when we deal with more exposures, more chronic illness, then Lyme can be a bigger deal for people and can start to cause symptoms and can start to become more of a health impact. So we may be seeing these increases in part because people are a bit sicker today, and so Lyme becomes more impactful than it used to be.
Okay.
Plus, I think some environmental factors contributing to spread.
Well, you're not the first one I've heard this. I've heard a lot of people talk about it. And then I had Dr. Scott Warner on my show about a month ago, and he said so many people who have this all of a sudden. That's why I ask you why all of a sudden, if you knew, because it just seems like this is just escalated. All of a sudden it's escalated. And I'd say the last 10, 15 years, it seems like. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's what it feels like anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, what I love about your book, you guys, and I'm just going to tell you, he talks about how to heal yourself. I love this because using the power of the mind, because we're very powerful souls here on this planet. And one of the chapters you have in the book is using the power of the mind for both treatment and results. So talk a little bit about this.
Yeah. So there's a lot of information about Lyme disease, and many books, and much of the information focuses on the physical treatment side of using things like antibiotics or antimicrobial herbals. And that's important. Functional medicine strategies, including supplementation, is important. We tend to use less on the antibiotic side in our practice, but one of the missing pieces is there's a lot that can be done on the mental, emotional, spiritual side. And
Right.
and if people miss that part and they're not managing their stress, it becomes an issue. Even just the diagnostic label of Lyme disease can exacerbate victim mentality, and people can get into a mode of feeling out of control of their life and their symptom picture. And that in and of itself can contribute to a worsened spiral of problems. And we know Lyme can get into the nerves, into the nervous system. We can see spirochete actually in the nerves.
Wow.
And we know that people with Lyme, due to a variety of mechanisms, including the autoimmune attack against receptor sites to neurotransmitters like dopamine in the brain, can cause people to become less stress resilient. So we know people can start to react more like they used to not be that stressed out by small things, but now they find themselves snapping at their loved ones, or they find themselves getting angry when they didn't used to get angry, or they find themselves having a lot of anxiety when they didn't used to have a lot of anxiety from similar situations.
So are these like symptoms of having Lyme's disease that you're talking about right now?
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Okay.
And so there's a lot that can be done through working on what we call brain retraining, as well as specific breathwork practices, as well as meditation and mindfulness practices, gratitude practices, can all make a big difference in, especially those those neurological and neuropsychiatric aspects of the symptomatology that people get from Lyme. If the nervous system is already inflamed and the mind is it's almost like a traumatic experience for someone to
Right.
go through a chronic infection like Lyme. And if we're not addressing that trauma on the level of the limbic system is that part of the brain that's that primal emotional part of the brain that can get triggered and traumatized in a way that a person can feel out of control. They can feel like their life has been taken over by this pathogen. They can feel like they're not able to do the things they used to do, to be with people in the way they used to be with people. I talk to people all the time who are struggling with Lyme disease, who feel like the world sees them as if they should be functioning normally, but they feel horrible on the inside, and they struggle to be able to maintain social relationships, to maintain a job. And that's so hard, and often they get dismissed by the medical system, and that adds
Yeah,
an
because they don't know what
extra.
to do with them. They don't know what's wrong with them. They're not just
Exactly.
testing for it. They don't know. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about this, because the mind and the body are so connected, and we've disconnected it, and you've brought it back, which is so nice. Since this is Nancy Earlt, this is High Road to Humanity, and we'll be right back. Humanity. I'm here today with Dr. Miles Nichols, and we're talking about Lyme disease. We're talking about mold. You had all this stuff. This is crazy. And so how did you heal yourself, and what did you do?
Yeah, so for me, in addition to figuring out that I had this stuff, which was a long journey of some lab testing and mentors to try to figure out what to even test for and how to even identify that this was going on. Once I identified it, I was able to combine the changes, the dietary changes, plus some supplementation using herbals and nutraceuticals, plus some mind work. And that mind work, really, for me, I started with meditation practice and movement practice was my beginning. I found a practice called Shengzhen meditation, which is involving physical movements that are qigong-like movements,
I've heard, yes.
plus non-moving meditative practice that was able to help me to come to a place where, rather than feeling like I really wanted things to be different than they were, because I was struggling inside, I was struggling with getting through school, I was struggling with feeling inadequate to do the things in my life I wanted to do.
Right.
And for me, the internal shift of through that practice, I was able to find a place inside of me that was untouched by any of the health problems, any of the struggles that I was facing in my life. I was able to find a place that was whole and complete and
Nice.
content, no matter what externally was happening
Right.
in my life, no matter what symptom picture I was feeling in my body. I was able to access that place that was unaffected by
That's right.
those stressors, challenges, and difficulties.
Yeah, I'm going to stop you
And
and ask you a question here, because I teach my audience how to bring in the light every day. I
yeah,
teach them how to bring in the light through their crown chakra, through their body. I do it every day. That's how I heal myself every day. And I teach them to be centered. And what you learned, what I'm realizing as you're talking to me, is you learned how to be centered with your soul, with yourself, and to connect to your higher self, connect to a higher vibration. That made you balanced enough to make it through this. I'm just, correct me
yeah,
if I'm wrong, so that
yeah.
you could move forward. And that's the key. It's really the first thing that has to be done. I'm so glad you told us this, because that's the beginning, isn't it?
Yeah, and to feel, for me to feel truly in my heart that there's
Mhm.
nothing more or different that I needed in order to be complete. Like, even though I felt fatigued, even though I had challenges and struggles in my life, to come to the point of feeling in my heart like I didn't need anything to be other than it is in order to feel complete, that I could feel complete. And from that point, I could still work on my energy, and I could still work on my body. I could still work on these issues. It didn't make me passive and resigned, as I think some people are afraid that it
Oh,
would.
right. It's not a weakness. It's actually a strength.
Yeah, to start from a
Mhm.
place of feeling an acceptance and embrace of what is as it is, to feel complete, and from that place work towards a better future. That to me was huge. It was a big piece of the puzzle for me. And it's
Yeah.
something that we train patients in our clinic to do as well.
I'm so excited that you do this. Now, how long you been doing this? How long you been working on this, and you have a clinic, and tell the folks about that.
Yeah, so we have a clinic. It's about we've been open for about 7 years. Medicine with Heart is the name of the clinic.
You're in Colorado, right?
We're in Colorado, although we
Yeah.
do telemedicine all across the United States, and
Cool.
we
Cool.
are able to guide people through a process of lab testing to identify if they have something like Lyme or a co-infection or mold illness or an autoimmune issue or a gut issue or a thyroid issue. We do lab testing, comprehensive lab testing, to identify root causes, followed by guiding people through step-by-step process for treatment of those issues, including supplementation, including nutrition, including stress management, meditation, including looking at brain retraining, so that trauma experience, which is another piece, and specific breathwork practices as well.
You're awesome. Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm working on retraining my brain right now.
Yeah.
I teach the audience too. You get that negative thought. I've taught people you got to sing, or you got to just, have something that you can immediately change. I love that you're doing this, because this is how you should practice medicine. This is perfect. You talk about diet, which, and let's talk about that real quick. I mean, let's get back to the alkaline diet, right? And because that's what I have to do. I have to do an alkaline diet. It's hard. I want to eat the cookies with the sugar, but it kills you. Talk about some of this stuff, the diet that you put people on. Tell the audience.
So really, the diet is very customized to the individual. As we do comprehensive labs, one person might have blood sugar and metabolic markers that make it better for them to do a very low carb diet, maybe a keto diet. Other people might have metabolic markers that all look normal, and maybe their blood sugar is actually trending a little low, and they might do better on a more moderate carbohydrate diet, but certain kinds of healthful carbohydrates, and avoiding certain kinds of processed foods. So it's very individual, depending on a person's metabolic markers as well as what root causes. If someone has small intestine bacterial overgrowth, they might not respond well to fiber that could be good for someone who doesn't have small intestine bacterial overgrowth. So it's very individual, depending on what we find in the gut, what we find on the blood testing, what we find in terms of root causes. We will customize dietary approaches. So we have a health coach who's also a nutritionist in our clinic, who helps guide people through a customized dietary plan for them based on their labs and root causes.
Right. Well, I guess I was getting at stop the processed food, stop the sugar, stop the soda, I mean, everything in moderation. But I think, stop the fast food. Stop the fast food, because that's what's killing us. And, I mean, I'm sure this has all been said before and everybody's heard it, but really it does. What you put in your body really makes a difference. And when you have this and then put the wrong thing in your body, it's just a whole thing. Now, as far as the stomach goes and the gut, and taking, something to help that bacteria, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So we see a lot of people who have overgrowth of bacteria, overgrowth of yeast, some kind of stomach infection, like I had H. pylori, bacteria that can live in the stomach. We see people who have parasites. We see people who have dysbiotic bacteria like Klebsiella pneumoniae in their gut. That's a problem. Bacteria that can be associated with certain autoimmune issues. So for a lot of people, probiotics can be helpful, or they can not be helpful, depending on if there's an overgrowth of bacteria and what kind of probiotic it is.
Okay.
Prebiotics and fiber can exacerbate and make some digestive issues worse. They can make others better. So it's also a very individualized approach to the gut and to gut health, and to what kinds of things will help. Often we do use probiotics of various sorts, and there are spore or soil-based probiotics. There's healthful yeasts like Saccharomyces boulardii that can crowd out pathogenic yeast and can bind to some mold toxin, interestingly. And then there are lactobifidobacterium, your standard probiotics that you typically see in the store. And those are hit or miss. Some people respond positively, some people negatively to those. And it depends on the qualities, the strains, and what's going on in the gut. So a lot of, fortunately and unfortunately, a lot of this work is trial and error. We might use 3 different classes of probiotics, see how people respond to each one,
Right.
and tweak and customize the protocol. Some people might do well with 2 of the 3. Some people might do well with all 3 classes. Some people might just have 1 class. Some people might not do well with any of them. So
Interesting.
we introduce things in a way where we can tell if people are having reactions, what those reactions are. We can look at lab tests to see if people's labs are changing in a positive or negative direction, and then we can customize a protocol for them. But I think probiotics are relatively safe for people to try themselves, but no,
think
not
so.
everyone's going to react positively.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just pay attention to your body, know your body,
Right.
try something for a few days, see how you do, if you feel better or worse, and trust your body in terms of giving you the message if it's right for you or not.
That's really, really good information. Listen to your body. Honestly, we need to be in tune. It needs to be a combination. You guys always hear this: body, mind, and spirit. It's not just words. It's really, you need to have that combination. You need to be in tune with your body, in tune with your spirit, and in tune with your mind. It's a combination, and that's how we stay healthy. It really is. Hey, we got to go to commercial break. You guys, I'm here today. Dr. Miles Nichols, this is the book. If you're watching me on YouTube today, it's Use Your Mind to Heal Mold and Lyme. This is Nancy Yearout. This is High Road to Humanity, and we will be right back. Hi, this is Nancy Yearout. This is High Road to Humanity. I'm here today with Dr. Miles Nichols, and we're talking about Lyme disease, and we're talking about mold. Before, I was going to ask you what's really important to tell the audience, but I really wanted to ask you quick about mold. I'm a real estate broker, and mold became a big thing for us. Oh gosh, maybe 15 years ago or more, where we really had to start watching houses for mold. We test for radon and we test for mold. It's quite interesting. The reason we tested for mold is there's so many people. We also do lead-based paint. There's different things as a broker. I've been a broker for 20 some years, so I know all these things. It's really interesting. I didn't know until I got into the business that lead-based paint can make a child, if they get the paint in their mouth, make them, retarded. Unfortunately, the mold can really kill somebody. Didn't know that either. And these things have become such major issues. Talk about mold a little bit.
Yeah, mold is a big issue, bigger than a lot of people realize.
I
Some
know.
of the research studies that have looked at water damage prevalence have found 1 in 2 American homes is water damage. That's half. And people think if I'm in a less humid environment, it's going to be better, but
It's not.
the studies that looked at different environments and different humidity levels found about equal distribution. We have pipes running through walls. There are lots of ways that water damage can occur. And then people think new construction is better than old. And that's overarchingly true-ish, but we see new constructions that have already had water damage, sometimes from the very beginning. And so, and there are some techniques that are being used in new constructions that are very energy efficient, but that are problematic from the perspective of generating mold, like really, really tight insulation, really tight, no gas,
So it can't breathe.
no airflow. Exactly.
Right.
The airflow, the lack of airflow actually worsens the growth of mold when the conditions are ripe for it. So there's a lot of issues with mold, and it's about 1 in 2 American homes that have water damage. And then about 1 in 4 individuals has a genetic predisposition for the immune system not to be able to identify mold toxin as a problem and get rid of it. This is a big problem because 1 in 4 means you could have 4 people living in a home, only 1 of them has that genetic, only 1's getting ill, no one suspects the home. But because we know that 1 in 4 have that genetic, and that genetic may express or not express, that we can have a whole family, 1 of whom is getting ill, and it can be the home that is the main cause of that illness, even if others aren't getting ill.
What are the symptoms?
Symptoms of mold illness are very wide. It creates what's called a chronic inflammatory response syndrome, or CIRS for short, which means inflammation everywhere in the body. And that could lead towards pain, physical pain, joint pain, for example. It could get diagnosed as fibromyalgia. It could get diagnosed as arthritis. It could get actually into the brain and cause brain inflammation and cause brain fog, neurologic dysfunction, in severe cases, things like seizures or diagnoses like ADD, ADHD, or serious feeling of brain fog, and even Alzheimer's and dementia have been associated
with
mold
mold
exposure. Yes. Yep.
Oh my gosh. Wow. It's almost like everybody needs to have a mold test done in their house.
Yeah, and some people might not have the genetic, and it might not be as big a problem to be in moderate to low levels of mold, but it's a problem for everyone to be in very toxic mold. And it's a big problem for about a quarter of the population.
That is crazy.
Who have that genetic. Yeah.
I'm glad to ask you about it. Now, I asked you during the break, what do you think would benefit the audience the most? So I want you to spend the last segment here talking about, how people can be helped by this book and what information you can give them.
Yeah. So one thing I want to make clear to people is that if people get a diagnosis in the standard medical system of, let's say, autoimmunity or fibromyalgia or depression or anxiety or neurologic conditions like Alzheimer's, dementia, cognitive decline, or they feel like they're trending in that direction, or they have a mystery illness, they don't know why they feel off and the tests come back normal. All of these things can boil back to Lyme and or mold as root causes. And there's very clear evidence now for Lyme and or mold triggering autoimmunity of various kinds, including thyroid autoimmunity. We know that Lyme protein looks a lot like thyroid tissue. And so there can be a cross-reactivity, and the immune system can attack thyroid tissue because of exposure to Lyme, as well as many other infections, foods, pesticides, chemicals. Things can cross-react. But we know that any autoimmune disease can have a component of Lyme and or mold to it. We also know that diagnoses like fibromyalgia is just a symptom-based diagnosis that doesn't know the cause. So I want people to understand that there are causes for things that often are said to not have causes. There are causes. And if someone's not feeling well, if you're not feeling really good in your body, please don't accept and resign to that as the only way to be in the
live.
world.
Yeah.
And seeking help. And sometimes it's through meditation, mindfulness practice, through gratitude practice, through brain retraining, through breath work. And sometimes it's through functional medicine, root cause-based lab testing, and then a treatment process. But I want people to have hope and not give up. If you're feeling off like I was with chronic fatigue, I could have resigned and said, maybe I'm just not meant to be a practitioner.
Oh my goodness. No.
And I don't want people to have that happen to them. So I encourage you, if you're feeling like something's off, trust that and seek help and work to find ways to be proactive and don't resign to one or two or three or four. It took me probably more than a dozen practitioners that I went to personally before I figured out what was going on with me.
Yeah. And I love that you have this in your book. And I just wanted to commend you on this. Towards the end, you have, and I was trying to look for it, Dr. Hopping. I love it. Yeah. When to hop and when to stop. Perfect. Yeah. Because that's exactly right. If you go to somebody and you say, I feel this and this and this, and they just kind of slough it off and write you a script, that's not cool. And so move on to the next one. I want to ask you really quick. So if I wanted to go test, just for example, if I had these symptoms and I'd say, oh, I want to go have a Lyme, do I have Lyme disease? Is there a test that I can take? Or I could contact your office and you guys can do a test for me. Can you do that kind of stuff?
Yeah, you can definitely contact the office, Medicine with Heart. Medicinewithheart.com is the website, and
Thank
we
you.
can help get you information about how to get tested. There are tests for Lyme disease. Unfortunately, the interpretation of those tests is very different. The labs that run those tests are very different. Some are specialized in working with Lyme and co-infections. Other of the big standard labs, they don't have the most sensitive testing. So people can often go to their conventional doctor, say, I want a Lyme test, and get a test that's almost worthless, unfortunately. And it might give a false negative. So people have to be aware that not all testing is created equal, and the interpretation of that testing is best done by a Lyme literate practitioner. So you want a practitioner who is Lyme literate in order to interpret a test properly and to know which test to run. So look for Lyme literate practitioners, and you're welcome to contact my clinic if you'd like.
Yeah, give your information out again, Dr.
Yeah, so
Nichols.
Medicine with Heart is the name of the clinic.
Right.
Medicinewithheart.com is the website. We also have social media and other places, and Amazon. You can get access to the book as well. So medicinewithheart.com is the main place to go if you want to get in contact with the clinic. You can schedule a free call there to chat with one of our staff to get you a little more information about the clinic and how things work there.
Well, tell me a couple. So you're a success story, and your wife is a success story as well.
Yeah. She also struggled with Lyme and co-infections as well as mold illness, and we were living in a moldy place.
Oh
and
my gosh, yeah.
It had to move out, and it took a while to figure out that was going on, way too long to figure out that was going on. And I want to prevent other people from having as long of suffering as both of us did before figuring that out.
Well, you're doing fantastic work. I want to commend you and thank you for this. This is a wonderful book. You guys, they can pick it up at Amazon or on your website.
Yep.
Either or.
Yep.
Okay, you guys, it's
Either
called,
or.
yeah, it's a survivor's guide, and it's by Dr. Diane Mueller and Dr. Miles Nichols. They did it together. Maybe we'll have her come back and say something next time you come on the show. You got any more books in the making?
Yeah, I want to write. So there's a brain retraining process in the science of gratitude that I really want to help people understand more about. And
Nice.
so that is it's in the brain and not on paper yet, but as we especially flesh out that process more, and we're looking to get a clinical trial on that process of utilizing brain retraining, breathwork, gratitude practices in order to help people extend their lifespan and recover from chronic illness. And that's coming down the pipeline at some point.
I love it. Well, thanks for joining us today. Hey, you guys, this is Nancy Yearout. If you want a psychic reading, go to my website, nancyyearout.com. We're so glad you came on the show today. You guys have a great week. This is High Road to Humanity. Everybody take care and God bless.
Connect the dots and keep the motion. Can achieve your goal. Let's hit the high road.
Hey, you guys, join me next week on The High Road for more stories filled with wisdom, love, and hope for our future. Have a fabulous week, and know that by staying on the high road, you will make it to your destination. Visit my website, nancyyearout.com, where you can book a private session to learn how to tap into your own abilities. And check out my YouTube channel. It's Nancy Yearout's High Road to Humanity.
You can achieve your goal.